Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. We're back again with another fantastic episode of Sirens, Slammers, and Service. And today I am joined by a rock star human, Erin Markowski. Erin is currently in a civilian role as an emergency communications officer with Edmonton Police Service. She's been with them for 4.5 years. I had the pleasure and honor of meeting Erin through a friend of ours, Chad, who used to work with me at the jail, came in to run a fitness test. And I said, hey, what you been up to? And he told me, Erin, I was like, does she want to be on my podcast? And he was like, she likes to talk. So yeah, I think she would like to be on the podcast. And so I got a chance to reach out to Erin and you immediately jumped on it, which made me super excited to do it.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. I'm doing really well, thanks. I'm excited.
That's awesome. You've got a good vibe. You got good energy like me, which I love. So that's fantastic. So you're with Edmonton Police in that emergency communications officer. So essentially a dispatch role. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, I've moved into a dispatch role, which is essentially a promotion from the other roles. 3-tier structure.
Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna get. I definitely want you to delve into this. You're the very first dispatcher we've ever had on, which makes me super happy. And also from Edmonton Police, which, if you listen to previous episodes, I've been trying to get them on the goddamn show for forever, and they take forever to decide if they're gonna let the people come on my show. So very exciting to have you. So tell me, like, how did you get into this? What kind of drew you to dispatch? I will say I've got another really good friend. She's a dispatcher in Strathcona County, and we talked, fairly regularly, and just the level of the volume of calls that you guys are getting that has increased, and just like the sheer like randomness of calls. Like some of the things she tells me, I'm just like shake my head and I'm like, really, we called 911 for this, or like they didn't call 911 until this part of the situation. Like, what do you mean, right? So tell me about this dispatch role. Tell me about how you got into it.
Yeah, you have no idea about the kinds of calls people call 911 for. It's every single day. It's something new. There's a new story to go home with. But in terms of me, I've kind of just always known since I was little that I wanted to do something in first response. I wanted to have a job where every day I could wake up and potentially save a life and go home and every day would be different. And my journey with careers has definitely turned me a couple different ways. I got my class 1 license when I was 20. So I started driving truck as well as dispatching trucks. And then it just wasn't really fulfilling me fully in what I wanted to do. And I knew there was a little bit more out there for me. So I actually have a cousin who works at EPS in a dispatch role. And my mom got me in touch with her. We hadn't actually ever even really met except for when we were little. So it was kind of odd reaching out to her and being like, hey, I'm your cousin. Do you mind answering some questions for me? But she was more than happy to. And, she kind of told me the nitty-gritty of what the role actually looks like. It's definitely a lot harder than people would think, or maybe less hard than people would think. I'm really not sure. I think the media does a weird role on showing people what a dispatcher's life is like. It's nothing like the media. But anyways, so I talked to her about it and I fell in love with the idea of it. I then went to Grant MacEwan in their 1-year certificate program, the Emergency Communications and Response Program. And as soon as I was certificate in hand, I applied for EPS. And about a month later, I had the job.
That's Awesome. I like, you know what, it's like, and I was saying this on previous episodes. We either fall into these careers or we're really like driven and we're like, this is what I want to do, right? So
Yeah.
I like that you came to this from you knew you wanted to do something, you knew you wanted to help, you knew you wanted to be part of that, first responder community, but not quite sure how, and then just kind of like, yeah, found it through family, and it makes me laugh. You're just like, so hey, can I just talk to you about this job? And you know what I think though, as females, we're so good at that. We're just like, yeah, absolutely. Ask me all the questions. Like I get calls all the
Exactly.
time, like, hey, Nikki, like, do you want to just, can you talk to my daughter? She's like 17 and she doesn't really know what she wants to do. And I think she'd make a great first responder. I'm like, will you talk to her? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. I'll talk to her. So these poor 17-year-old girls are getting phone calls from me and I'm like, hey, let's chat. And they're like super awkwardly like talking to me. But then I get off the phone and their moms are like, that was amazing. Like they can't wait. They really want to do it and they're super excited to go into that career. And so yeah, I think like having somebody, and that's part of the reason I started this podcast was I
Yeah.
want people to hear from women that work in these careers because you can go to the career fair and you can like again, we talk about the media, right? The media's a depiction of what we do and like it's all of the time it's wrong. Like I don't even know.
Yes.
I'm like, I always think to myself, did you like actually like talk to somebody that does the job before you put that in the movie? No, you didn't. Okay, I can tell. I can tell you didn't, right? But yeah, like so then for people to be able to actually talk to somebody that's in that role as a female and say,
Mhm.
hey, these are the questions I have. Like, well, do you think I can do it? Like, what about this? What about that? Right. And you just kind of fall more naturally into the role when you've had that opportunity to have those conversations. And so I really love hearing that that was kind of what led you in there. And so tell me a little bit about schooling because I didn't realize that you had to go to school for it. I mean, that's stupid of me. I probably should have realized that. But it's like I just kind of thought it would be more like on the job training. So like what are you learning during that 1 year program?
So you're actually not wrong. You don't need schooling anymore. Unfortunately, when I went to school and paid all the money for it and took it out of the loans, two classes after my class with EPS were eligible to be hired without the program. So I missed the mark by like a month. I could have just waited and not have paid all that money. But
Oh,
to be fair, it did put me in a different hiring class, and the like wage increases are better and everything. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't regret it, and I met so many amazing friends in that 1 year of school. But yeah, essentially, what it is it's so you do your law, you do your psychology, you do your basic English, like just those kind of basic starter classes. And then you've got a class every day with the same professor who essentially puts half the class in a room with a phone and the other half of the class in another room with the other side of a phone line or a radio. And you just practice as if you're in like a real life situation. So we were practicing fire, ambulance, and police.
mhm.
It was I'll be very honest, it was very hard to take seriously when you're with your friends and you're having to come up with emergencies on the spot.
Yeah, yeah.
They got very ridiculous, like just so left field. But I mean, I guess that's also a good thing because really that is what you face in the actual real world of dispatching is the most left field stuff. So it was fun, and yeah, every day was different and somewhat uh, laughable, but it really did actually get me prepared for what I was up against for sure. And that professor, Doug, he's a no bullshitter. Like he'll really tell you how hard the career can be at certain points. So, and he'll let you listen to really hard audio recordings of certain kind of calls. So it did let you know what you were up against for sure. I don't regret taking it. It's just kind of funny that when I applied, you needed it. And then two classes after my class got hired, it was like, yeah, you're good. You don't need it.
You're like, damn it all. Like,
It was a lot of
yes.
money.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that's awesome though, like because like you're saying, like in how to get better at those calls, like it's like a workout. It's sheer reps, right? The more reps you put in, the better you're gonna be. So even though those calls with your friends are kind of ridiculous, and you can, you get into the giggles, and you say to yourself, "There's no way that that would happen," like ha 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 ha, right? But it's those reps, and it's that getting used to answering the phone and answering, and having that, automatic default where it's now muscle memory. You know exactly what to say.
Yes.
You've practiced it enough times that now you're not stumbling for, oh, what do I say next, or how do I get this person the help they need. You've done it enough for practice that you can kind of roll right into it really naturally, which is great. And so, like, did they give you, like, I guess, like, role plays to play, like, here are typical emergencies, and then from there, okay, also now make up your own?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, wanted to pop on here before we got into this next episode and let you know about a couple new rad ideas that we have for the podcast. So, the first one is we have a survey up, and I would love to know what you guys think about the show. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your ideas for the next season. And I just love to know what you like and what you dislike about the podcast. And I'm going to sweeten the deal with a $50 gift card randomly drawn from everybody that completes the survey. The survey is going to be in the show notes of all of our shows. So no matter what time you start listening to the podcast at, you'll get a chance to win that gift certificate. The second thing that we're bringing in now is the ability for you guys to leave us a voicemail. You guys can actually call into the show, leave us a voicemail, let us know what you think about the show. If you have a funny story you'd like to share from your time as a first responder, I would love those and showcase those on the show as well. So make sure you guys check out that voicemail feature. It's going to be in the show notes, and check out the survey. Make sure you get that chance to win that gift certificate.
Yes, exactly. So, like some days we'd have like this big box and you would just kind of like ruffle through it and pull out a scenario, and that's what you would be doing. And they were like, a lot of them were absolutely ridiculous in itself. And then other times he would just kind of let us come up with our own. But even if you had that scenario in hand, you still kind of had to make up like your own name and your own address and phone number and stuff. So it did get quite ridiculous. Like the names, we just always came up with a new celebrity. Sometimes we'd try and mimic what the celebrity sounded like.
Yes, that's awesome.
You got to keep it
awesome.
fun.
It is. It is. When we at the jail, we rolled out the new inmate management system. We had to do a bunch of like beta testing and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, make up all these like different inmate names, and you needed enough to like fill a unit, right? To be able to do like moves and get used to it. And so it's like Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, Daisy Duck, like, and all of these like Disney princesses are in there, and like, and so then when you go in to do like your training class on like the next level, it's like, oh, who would you like to be? I'll be Ariel. You'll be Ursula. Okay, great. Right. So you basically graduated and applied to EPS. What was the application process like for that?
It was 4.5 years ago, so I don't fully remember. I know that you apply online whenever they have a posting open, which as of recently, they've had quite a few postings open for long periods of time because I'll be very honest, we are struggling. We need people. The call volumes are just excuse me, getting bigger, and we're just struggling to keep up sometimes. But from when I was hired, there was a posting for, I think they were asking for like 10 people. I knew there was a couple hundred or so that had applied. Yeah, I applied. Then I think the first step was a in-person interview. And then the next step was a background test. Or sorry, the first step was like you go into the EPS and you do an online testing. So like you're typing and just making sure you can type fast enough and all of that. And then you go for the interview, then you do your whole family's background. It was actually very extensive. Like even my boyfriend's parents, siblings at the time, like it got quite in depth. And then you just do like a hearing test. And then if you've passed all those steps, you're hired on, I believe. Like I said, it was 4.5 years ago. So sorry, my memory is a little foggy, but
no, that's good. I just like to give people kind of like a snapshot of like, these are the things you're going to like. Again, I would not have known that they would have been doing a hearing test or a typing test. Like, I mean, yeah, I should have, because literally you need to be able to hear well and you need to be able to type fast, right? But again, like those are just random things that you kind of like, oh yeah, I guess, right? You do have to have that. So No, that's really interesting. And you mentioned at the beginning, when we were kind of doing the intro, that you promoted into this now emergency communications officer role. So, in that there was kind of a multi-tiered system. So, like, you obviously didn't start at that level. So, what level when you first start as a brand new person, like, what level do you start at?
Sure. So, bear with me. It's a little hard to explain, but I'll do my very best to put it in simple terms. Emergency communications officer encompasses all of us who work in the dispatch center. And then there's 3 roles that you work at once you get hired into EPS for an emergency communications officer. Your first is you'll start in the role of 911. So a lot of people think 911 is like its own call center or something. It's not. We're actually 911 at Edmonton Police Service. So between fire, ambulance, and police, one of us needs to be what we call the primary service answering point. And EPS has held on to that role for as long as I've been there, and I think for years and years before it. I think fire had it at one point, if my memory serves me correct, but we've held on to it for quite some time. So we do hire people to start in that 911 role, which I did as well. I did my couple months in that role. It can be boring at times, don't get me wrong, because you're basically doing the exact same thing over and over. You're just doing 911. Do you require police, fire, or ambulance? If they are going to ambulance, you just need to double check if there's any violence involved. If yes, then you're pushing them over to police. For police, you ask what the emergency is right off the bat, because I would say about 60% of calls that come to 911 for police are not emergencies. So if it's not an emergency, you route it to the non-emergency line. You ask them to call back on the non-emergency line, whatever it may be. And then fire is pretty generic. You just get the address and the phone number and send it over to fire. And obviously in all of them, you verify the address and phone number if it qualifies for the place that it's going. So that's 911 in a nutshell. You're kind of the triage center. You're sending where it needs to go. And then after however long you've been in that position, they'll do a class for evaluators is your next position. And when you're an evaluator, you're the one actually sitting in the role for police. Like you've kind of put your police hat on at this point, and you're either answering emergency police calls or non-emergency police calls. You'll know which call is coming into your screen, so you know which way to answer it. So you answer based on which one, and then you go over your generic questions in like say a 911 call scenario. What's the suspect wearing? What's the weapon look like? What's direction of travel? What's the vehicle make, model? All of that. So when you're an evaluator, you're the one actually asking all of those important questions, typing it into the call at the same time, choosing the priority of the call, what kind of call it is, like a weapons call, let's say it's the highest priority. You're sending it over then to the dispatchers, which is the role that I've now graduated into. So I've made my way. I stayed in eval as an evaluator for almost 3.5 years until I was put into the dispatch role. So it does take some time. They do want to make sure that you're, really set in your role as an evaluator before you do move on to dispatch, because dispatch is where you're going to be talking to the actual officers out on the street. And you're the one who's over the radio saying things like, okay, cars in this sector, we've got a priority 1, which is the highest priority, weapons complaint at this address. Eval says there's a male walking around with a gun. And then, you're putting your cars on it, and you're basically their point of safety. And yeah, it's definitely a bigger role in terms of the weight of it. Is I'm looking out for my brothers and sisters in blue right now. That's my number one. So eval has its challenges in its own way, where it's definitely more taxing. I will say that, because talking to the general public for 12 hours a day is not an easy thing to do, especially some members of the public. I mean, let's be real.
You're so good. You're so politically correct. That's so nice. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, people are so goddamn dumb. People are I'm trying
to hope that some people may want to enter this career after this podcast. No, I'll be real. People can be so stupid, but
Yeah.
There's the good moments tend to outweigh the bad in your mind. I'll say that. But
Yeah.
it's basically the 3-tier structure, and that's how it works. And I know it's a little complicated when you're looking at it from the outside, but yeah, it's pretty easy when you're in there, and it's a wheel. It's got all of its moving parts, and it works well. So
No, I like that. I'm really glad that you kind of broke it down like that. And like to me, it's very clear. But I think the thing that really stands out to me is, holy shit, I didn't realize there was that many like layers. Like, because like I've had to call 911, right? Like from the jail multiple times. Like we need an ambulance, we need what usually an ambulance, right? And so yeah, so when you call in and you're like, and I teach first aid too, and so I always ask the question like, have you ever actually had to call 911? Majority of people have not had to call 911. Like the regular public for the most part has never had to call 911, or if they have, it was usually, again, probably not emergency, right? But like they thought it was an emergency. But so then when you say like, well, so be prepared, like when you're talking to 911, they need to know you're going to, like, again, that you're going to get the first stage. Like, do you need police, fire, or ambulance? Okay, well, we need an ambulance. Again, if we're talking first aid, or usually at the jail, right? Okay, well, we need an ambulance. Okay, well, and then, yeah, okay, now you're punted over to them. And again, different agency, but same thing. So who's the, like, how old is the victim? What's going on? Are they breathing? Are they conscious, right? Well, usually if you're the person that has been sent to call 911, you are not standing next to the person. And I'm just like, I don't know fucking how old this person is. I don't like, let me go back with, and like, again, in the jail, you're on a landline, right? So it's not like you can go back with your cell phone and be like, his name is so-and-so, right? So before you go, we always say, like, make sure you have this information, because they're going to be asking for all this stuff, right? And it is a lot of times, again, coming down to police and ambulance and fire, it's a matter of minutes that make a difference, right? In the person's level of care or the response time or things like that. So
I will say, a lot of people don't know is that to give ambulance credit where credit is due, I could never do what they do, because they have to follow a strict protocol, which means word for word. Like if they mess up one word, it's not great for them, right? But I get it. It's they're saving lives in people's literal worst moments, so they go by this very exact protocol. Whereas at EPS, and I'm actually not really sure how, I think fires is pretty protocol too, but at Edmonton Police Service, just because of the nature of the different things that we get, we have a generic question sheet that we have to do, that we do have to ask each caller, but we have more leniency. We have a little bit of room to wiggle. So ambulance, I always feel for them, because they have to ask the questions in an order. And if the person on the other end of the phone is going off, they don't really have the ability to kind of change it or mold it to how that person is reacting or feeling. So yeah, just one thing for anybody listening, go easy on them. They have a little harder. I mean, go easy on us at EPS too, please. But we do have a little more wiggle room. So yeah, it's different everywhere for sure.
Well, and that was the other thing I was going to say is so it sounds to me, just like the way you've kind of, like, all the things that are happening there, there's basically like flow charts of like, okay, it's this call, it goes this way. It's this call, it goes this way. Oh, they've said this. Okay, well now, like, again, now we're prioritizing, like, engage this. And so when you're going through, and I'm going to come back to kind of your first day, but when you're going through that, like as a newbie, like is the support there of like, holy fuck, I've never dealt with this call before, but like, let me look at this chart or this flow diagram or something and be like, okay, so they've said this, so now I should be asking this, or I should be doing this, like this is this, I should be typing this in because now they've said this. Like, is there that kind of assistance, I guess?
Yes, yeah. So it's all through computer aided dispatch. It's all on the computer. It's amazing. So if you click this answer, like say weapons, yes, it'll redirect you into what the next question should be, and it'll send the important information into the call as quickly as possible. So the things that the officers are, kind of barking down dispatch's throat for, which fair enough to them, they're going lights and sirens. They want to know what this guy's wearing. Like, they don't want to come face to face with him, right? So
yeah,
it does a great job, and just our evaluators in general are trained really well to get that very important information first. And the most important information usually is the suspect, because like I said, if we're walking into a crowd and Next thing we know, officers are a gun's being aimed at them because they didn't know what the suspect looked like. That could have been avoided completely. So the computer aided dispatch does such a great job of pushing those things to the forefront if it's that kind of a call. So it honestly doesn't really go through your mind a whole lot. It's kind of the computer working for you. The only time you ever need to like whip out the really old, big chart thing is whenever we're in a crash, and that's everybody's worst day when our whole system goes down. Is when we gotta whip that thing out, and we've got these big maps for dispatch, and you're trying to figure out what side of the city, and it's not great. But no, in general, our computer systems are awesome, and they really do the work for you a lot of the time. So you're kind of just mimicking what the computer is telling you to ask the caller, and then typing in the information the caller gives. So yeah, and you did ask about if you have that support. I mean, when I went into the role of evaluator, I had 8 weeks where someone was hooked up with me right behind my side.
Okay.
So for a lot of people will think like, I'd be thrown to the wolves. No, you have lots and lots of time. And if those people who are training you don't think for a second that you're like, even the smallest details, if they don't think you're ready, they will hold you back, because it's people's lives on the line that we're talking about, like genuinely people's lives. So yeah, if we don't think you're ready, I mean, I've been in the position of a training officer before. It's hard. It's a hard conversation, especially when you've come to get to know these people, but you do have to hold them back if that's what's going on. But ultimately it's for the better of everyone. And yeah, it's always worked out in the end. Everybody's always gotten through and started on their own, but it just takes a little longer for some than others, but we don't give up on people, which is awesome.
Yes, that's fantastic. I'm really glad that you said that. Like, we don't throw them into the wolves, because so many other first responder careers, that is 100% exactly what we do. We're like, hey, so you've been here for like 72 hours, and now you're going to run this whole unit by yourself because we're short staffed. And don't call me because I'm really busy as well. And so if you have an issue, like, just figure it out on your own. So I really like the fact that you guys are like, we are not going to do that. We're going to take care of you and make sure that you're fully experienced and fully comfortable, which is great. That's really good. So take me back. So you've got the job, you've done all these mock calls and training, and you walk in on your first day. Like, how was that first day? Like, were you just shitting your pants? Because I would be just shitting my pants. Like,
I genuinely was. So our very first week, we were actually in a classroom where they kind of do the same thing I did in school. Like, they do some fake scenarios and stuff, and they just walk you through. This was the 911 side of things, right? In 911, you've got a week in the classroom and then a week on the floor with someone hooked up to you. As evaluator, you've got like, I think 6 weeks in the classroom, and then like 6 to 8 weeks on the floor with someone hooked up to you. So much more training is involved with evaluation, which I'm sure you can understand, because 911 is pretty basic. 911, do you need police, fire, ambulance, right? But the first week in the classroom was pretty easy, because I actually was with a lot of my friends that I knew from school. Like, quite a few of us had gotten hired together for EPS. So I felt comfortable at least knowing some people. But I will tell you, when I walked out onto the floor the very first day that I had to take calls, all of my friends, like the 5 other people who were training with me that day, their trainers got onto the phones first and was like, this, we'll show you what we do. Like, you can listen for an hour, kind of get comfortable with it. My trainer, Tammy, I love her to death, but she was like, you've signed up for this job, get on the phone.
So you're like, oh, wonderful.
So I'm talking about not throwing to the wolves, and then I'm like, well, but no. she took one look at me and she's like, you're fine, get on the phone. So I didn't have the same luxury that everybody else did to kind of sit there and listen, but I honestly prefer it that way. I didn't have an hour to stew and get absolutely terrified over tripping up over my words or whatever once the call came into my ear. And I remember the first call I took, I was trembling, like my voice, I'm sure the person on the other line was like, who is this 14-year-old girl answering my call? Like, like, she sounds like she's going to literally shit her pants. And I seriously thought I was going to. It was a terrifying moment. But after about 5 calls, I was like, okay, I got this. Like, this is no big deal. It really is just ripping off that Band-Aid and getting it over with. And everybody feels the same way. Anybody you ask who has taken their first 911 call will say the exact same thing. I was shitting my pants. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're calling 911. It could be that person's very first 911.
if you hear the 14-year-old, do you need police, fire, or ambulance? You'd be like, hi, I'm having the worst day of my life, but I know it's also your first day, so you're doing great, but I really need an ambulance.
You're doing great, sweetie. Take your time. It's all right. I'm bleeding out. Don't worry about it.
Well, and like that's the thing. I mean, like I feel like, well, they probably like vetted you through the like class and was like, hey, this girl's good. Like we're gonna stick her with this, this training officer, this person, because it was the same for me. Like when, like again, rolling into things, they're like, well, here you go. Like when I got my CO3's position, they were like, yeah, off you go. Here's your stripes. Like, and I was like, what do you mean off I go? Like, there's nobody gonna show me what to do. And they were like, no. And I was like, what do you mean nobody? And they're like, just do it. Like, just do it. And I was like, just do it. Like what? But like, afterwards, like talking to my boss at the time, he was like, we knew you could do it, Nikki. So like, why would we put you with somebody like, just do, like he said, rip the Band-Aid off, get out there. Yeah, you're scared, suck it up, off you go. If you fuck up, we're here, we'll help you. Right. But like, go fly, little birdie. Right. So yeah.
No, I'm very grateful it was that way. Because
right.
I would have rathered that than the hour sitting there being like, holy shit, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? Okay, it's coming. Like instead she was just like, take the first call. And I was like, well, okay, here we go. We're going.
Yeah. Well, I've talked about this in another episode when I was talking about the kind of things I did in the jail when I was in central control, which is kind of, I guess, our dispatch. Like that would be what you would say is our dispatch. When you're training, right, you get your mock code. And so you usually kind of know, like you've been training in there, say like 2 or 3 sets, and you're like, okay, like it's coming at some point, like so every day you come in, you're like, oh, I'm gonna probably have my mock code today. It's probably gonna be today. Oh, okay, you get through the day, you're like, hey, wasn't it? But yeah, that like sitting and waiting and being like, oh my god, like just do it already, just fucking call me and like get this over with, because like, and I was saying too on my mock code, I forgot to beep off, like, so it came over the intercom, and so. And then you go live and you announce it, right? And so I announced the code, but then I was like panicking. And so I left it live. And so the whole building, inmates, the staff can hear me be like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, guys. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Okay, I need elevators. And I'm like, and they hear me talking myself through this entire code, right? So it's live. The whole building can hear me.
I feel you on that so hard. In dispatch, we can broadcast to every single car and every single open radio, and that includes like the big bosses. And there's been times where I've been like, whoa, that was bad. Like, and I actually do have one story of an open mic that was brutal. My mic was stuck open, and I was sorry to go off track, but
do it. Tell me the story so that I'm not the only one that has done this.
Oh my God, it was so embarrassing. To this day, it keeps me up, and it was brutal. But it was first thing in the morning, and long story short, an evaluator walked over to me and was confused about why an officer wasn't going to a call. It was miscommunication on my part. I was being too quick to judge. It was like 5:20 in the morning. I was grumpy. I hadn't had my coffee yet. And so I'm running my mouth a little bit on this police officer, calling him lazy. And then, my friend walks away. Her name's actually Nikki. She walks away, and then I'm like, I go to broadcast something to that same car. And so I did. I told him something over the radio, and then he comes back on and he goes, yeah, dispatch, I know. I heard everything you just said. And that was like a huge learning moment for me. It's like, okay, I mean, let's be honest. We all blow off steam. We all talk shit here and there. We do. It's just how we get through our job. But at the end of the day, we have nothing but the utmost respect for each other and what each other does. And we just want to keep each other safe, truly. But it is those moments that you are like, fuck, you get caught with your foot in your mouth a little bit. And I sent him a very nice email, and I was so apologetic. And it was just really genuinely a communication. But it turns out that I wasn't just like sitting on my mic or anything. I actually had a broken mic pack that day. So that also wasn't really my fault, but just the worst possible timing for a mic pack to be stuck open.
Yeah, when you're like, this guy is just sitting around. I don't know what he's doing. Fucking move, buddy. Like I fucking dispatched
it
you a
was like
couple
something
times.
along the lines of that too. But there are so many stories. Like I've had people who apparently have been talking about how they like need to take a shit and their things wide open, and so the officers have heard it all, and vice versa. I have heard a lot of things from the officers' mouths when their mics get accidentally stuck open. So it's a two-way street, and we laugh it off and we get over it. But it happens. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that is the nature of the beast when you're on it like two-way radio. It's just like there's gonna be radio mishaps. There's gonna be like, there's gonna be things that happen and you go, yeah. So tell me then about like just some of the calls you're getting, some of the like we've talked about call volumes. We know call volume is super high. What are some calls that stick out in your mind and kind of make you go like either holy fuck, that was crazy, like that was really stressful, that was really hard, or again, I cannot believe this fucking guy called 911 for this and I had to walk him through this call, right? Like what kind of stories do you have for me?
It's funny because people always ask this question about funny calls, and truthfully, they don't stick out in your mind as much as the kind of, oh my gosh, that was a terrifying call does, right? It's just kind of, at least for me, that's how I feel. So when you ask me about a funny call, the number one thing that sticks out in my head is I had a lady once call 911 because her children weren't eating their chicken nuggets. I'm not even kidding. She wanted police to come to her house and coach her children on eating their lunch. And I sometimes we do really have to lay into these people and be like, you can absolutely not be calling 911 for this. This isn't even a police matter, let alone a 911 call. And we do have to coach the public a lot on proper use of 911 because sometimes that's the only opportunity we'll get, right? Is that time on the phone with them. Another thing I should mention is we only have 60 seconds at 911 to triage you accordingly. So we don't want to waste our minutes and get flagged for going over a minute coaching you on not calling 911 for your child not eating their nuggets. But it sticks out in my mind so much because I remember turning to my colleague and going, damn, if only like when I was growing up, it was chicken nuggets that I was being fed and not wanting to eat. It was right. It was like broccoli and like all of those like dried up pork chops that I was refusing to eat. Like not Brussels chicken nuggets. Like what? These kids, you know what? I will send a police officer because
you need to know how goddamn lucky you are, chicken nugget kids.
I'll come eat your chicken nuggets. Do you have extras? Like
yes. So when you say it was 60 seconds, so like what is the penalty if you're over the 60 seconds? Like you're saying you get flagged. Is that like a, hey, why is this taking you so long? Or what was happening? Or like, is it more like, oh, was there a tech issue? Like, the phone was cutting out, something like that. Like what's the flag it meant to do?
So flag is basically, we've got a quality assurance training unit who monitors, kind of like reviews our calls, and they'll be able to see every call that went over a minute, and they will just send it to us in an email. It's not like a, hey, you're in trouble. It's just like a, hey, these are your calls that went over this month or whatever. Like, and it shows you kind of what calls you're maybe struggling with keeping under a minute, because it really, like, every second counts, right? So 911 is under a minute for a reason. We don't have time to sit there and chit chat. It's like, I need the information now so I can send you the right way. So I mean, it's not like a, you're in trouble. It's just like a, hey, just so you know, this call, you went a minute and 3 seconds or whatever. And those seriously, like you just brush those off. But I have had calls before that have gone to like 4 minutes because you almost just get in your own head and you're like, you're trying so hard to just get an address or something, and the person is not focusing. And really in those times, you should just have sent it over to police emergency anyways and let them figure it out. But you kind of get a little trapped sometimes, and you're like, I can get this out of this person. I need to get this out of this person. So if you go over 2 minutes, TELUS actually gets those stats and then sends them to us. and is like, hey, your call taker or whatever went over 2 minutes, because it flags on their system for some reason. So yeah, those ones are kind of worse. Like you don't really want to go over 2 minutes, because then it's like, ooh, you know, you could have sent that quicker. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I've never once gotten in trouble. It's just like a, hey, just try and keep this quicker, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's good too. That's because it's a little, when you think, because the other thing is time fucking goes. Like when you're in an emergency and you're dealing with that stuff, and you're like, time goes fast, and you're like, holy shit, I've like been on the phone for this long, like, or oh my gosh, like I didn't realize it was, you like you're saying, 2 minutes before this moved, to the next stage. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be cognizant of that, of like, I need to ask these questions faster, I need to do this faster, right? So yeah, that's I like that. That's interesting. So then, I asked this question with trepidation, just because I know, having been, through what I've been through, is sometimes the last thing you want is like, oh, what's the worst call you've ever been to? Like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? Because like, that was the worst day of my fucking life. Like, I don't want to fucking relive that shit. It scared the piss out of me. Like, why, like, for your entertainment, why do I want to relive this? But I'll ask it just in well, and again, just not even in like, what was your worst call, because sometimes those ones are really hard to come back to. And I don't want to leave that like that, to re-traumatize you with it. But what are some calls that have stuck out in your mind, just for whatever reason? Either it was, super traumatic for you, or it just was like, God, that was such a hard one, because we had to, like, the logistics of it were really tough, and we had to coordinate a lot of different people, or things like that. Like, what kind of calls do you have that way?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I have no problem talking about my hardest calls either. It's the nature of the job. It's, it's good to be transparent about these kind of things, because anybody who's considering coming into a role like this or a career like this, they do need to know that it does get hard at times. So without going into details, I'll just say my hardest call that I've ever heard was I was actively listening to a female being raped. That was the hardest call I've ever taken, just for me personally. And all the child calls, like all the things that you hear about really bad child sexual abuse, can be obviously really hard. And yeah, there's a bunch of different calls, and sometimes things hit you weird in a way that you don't know why that call hit you so hard, or whatever it may be. So I do just want to say that to anybody, who's considering a career like this, there is those hard calls, but at the end of the day, you're their safe space on that phone line, and you're there to do your job and get them the help as quick as you can. So you have such an important, pivotal role in that moment and in their lives. They'll never forget you. On their worst day, you were their voice in their ear. You're kind of their angel, right? So the job does definitely, like, the good feelings outweigh the bad. But in terms of the two, when people ask me about my craziest calls, two stick out so like easily for me. There's one, which I'm sure you'll know about, the Young Offender Center. It was summer of 2021, maybe. There was a man who walked into the building with a gun. Do you remember anything about that?
I knew kind of some of it, just from, again, friends that worked there that were like, holy shit, Nikki, like, you'll never guess what happened today. But I didn't know. Was it it was either a parent or like a guardian or something, wasn't it?
It was a friend, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, a friend who wanted his buddy out of the center. But that was a crazy call for me, because that was one that changed on a dime. So when the call first came in, I'm talking to the guard on the phone. She's really nice. We're kind of chatting, and we're almost making jokes about the situation, because at this point we've got the male suspect locked in between the two front doors. I'm sure you know all about this, but when you walk into like a prison or whatever, you can trap them in, essentially. You can't come in, you can't leave. So he's trapped in, and he's agitated, and he's trying to break the glass and trying to break the metal detector and all of that. So at this point, I have it in as a higher priority call for sure. But I'm thinking like, oh, just your kind of run of the mill trouble with person call, right? So I'm chatting with the girl and I'm not making jokes necessarily, but I am saying to her like, oh, how great is it that you've got that little area that you can contain someone? Like we won't have to go looking for them. It's great. And, you know, she's kind of, we're just shooting the shit, like just talking while we're waiting for the police to get there. I've got like 2 cars on it. And then all of a sudden he swings a body bag around to his front side, like an over the shoulder body bag. And it's interesting because just a little side note, but one thing I will say is as a call taker and as a dispatcher, you kind of have to, like reading a book, you almost kind of have to picture your own scenario. Like you have to build the house or the building. So I still in my mind have a picture, and I'm sure it's nothing like what it looks like because I've never actually been to the detention center, but you know, to this day I can still picture it, even though that's probably not at all what the suspect looked like or whatever. But he threw around a crossbody bag to his front, and he immediately pulls out a handgun and points it at her. And I remember just in that moment when she said, he has a gun, the first words out of my mouth were, get down, are you down, get down, are you down? And I think she kind of froze because she didn't answer me until the 5th time I had asked. And she's like, oh yeah, like I'm down and behind my desk. And I'm like, okay, so now I've changed it to the highest priority call. I've got a man pointing a gun, right? That's the highest priority call you can get. And then next thing I know, I've got 25 cars on it or whatever it was. And that was one of those moments where it just had changed so quick that my hands had started to shake, and it was really hard to type. Like I am an extraordinarily fast typer. Ask anybody who works with me, I'm probably the fastest typer we have at my workplace. Like I can type 140 words per minute on a good day, but I swear I like went down to like 40 words per minute. Like my hands were shaking. I couldn't even type in like male has a gun, like pointing it at the reporter, right? So that sticks out in my mind as just being a really crazy one. And the crazy ones for me are always the ones that show up in the media half an hour later, and the reports are always really wrong. And and then you're kind of like, I know so much more about this than the general public does, but obviously can't say anything, and they're getting it wrong. And so it's always kind of crazy, those kinds of calls. But that one was a really crazy one for me just because of how quickly everything turned. And then the other one that was absolutely crazy for me is I don't know if you remember the car full of young kids that did a couple rolls and flipped into a Starbucks.
No.
It was a couple summer. It might have even been the same summer. It was kind of a crazy summer for me, but it was like 3 a.m. and this is, you know, maybe it stands out so much because I hadn't had a call in like an hour and a half. It was a really weird lull of a summer evening where I had my feet up. I'm like watching TikToks, you know, I'm half asleep, whatever. And a call comes in my ear.
Chilling.
Yeah, it's really, that's part of the job too, how quickly you have to kind of snap out of it and get back to work. But call comes in my ear. It had hung up. So I'm thinking, okay, like I'll call this guy back and it'll be like a missed dial or something. I call back. I'm in the position of evaluator at this point, not 911 evaluator. So I'm the one who's actually has to like talk to him and ask all the questions, but the call did come over to me. So I call him back, and the only words out of this man's mouth are, they're dead. They're all dead. It's just what he kept repeating to me. And I'm trying to get like, you know, I can tell he's in very obvious shock. I can't determine, where are you? Like, what are you talking about? So it took me honestly a good 5 minutes or so to get an address out of him. I mean, we do have a general like pinpoint when a cell phone calls in. It can be really off. So you need to get that intersection that he's at, right? And I found him, and then he just keeps repeating, they're dead. They're all dead. And he had told me that the driver had gotten out and was making very like suicidal thoughts. And so that now I've got a suicidal driver on the run, and then I've got, you know, potentially dead people. I really didn't know what was going on because he couldn't get that out. And that was a crazy one too, because that's the first time I've ever heard my voice on the news. You know, when they would put 911 calls on the news, that was my first one, and my only one that I know of. And it was embarrassing. My family was making fun of me because they don't understand that I had been talking to this man for a long time. And sometimes what you need to do to get the person to snap out of that shock is get very stern. So I was very
Yeah.
stern at this point. The clip that they decided to use in the news is like me like almost yelling at this man. Like, what are you talking about? Who is dead? Like, I was trying to get him to, you know, come to, like, get out of his shock for just a second so he could explain it to me. And so I've seen like the worst call taker in the world just yelling at this poor man, but I promise that's not our tactic. We don't just yell at people. It's just sometimes you kind of need to try different levels of escalation. Sometimes whispering to them and almost like talking to them like a child is the best thing you can do. And sometimes really truly yelling or kind of raising your voice a little bit is the thing that works. So it was what worked. It was played on the news. And then for weeks after, I'd be walking through grocery stores and stuff, and people would be talking about it. And it's just one of those really surreal moments that hits you, that you're kind of like the first person to know about it besides the witness who you talked to on the phone. And that was your call. And that's going to stick with you forever. And it's just weird to be out in public and hear so many people talking about your call. So that one sticks out in my mind too. And, you know, there was friends of friends in that vehicle that passed away that day. So that also sticks out to me because I didn't know that. I didn't know them personally, but friends. So yeah, that's another one that just really sticks out in your mind. And I guess for me, the ones that do stick out more are the ones that are so heavily covered in the media, because it's just crazy that you were a part of it.
Definitely, I resonate with that a lot, especially at the jail, because like, who's on the front page of the newspaper? Well, he was on my unit. Like, even we were at a fire on the weekend, and you know, somebody was talking about, oh, the Mark Twitchell, right, the one that the filmmaker, and I, without thinking, I was like, oh, he was on my unit for like 2 years. And everyone at the fire like whips around and they're like, what? And I'm like, well, yeah, like, you know, like I had to do rounds every day on that unit, like, and I talked to him every day. And they're like, is he, like, was he a crazy, like, you know, like, and then they want to know, but because, and like you said, that's you were there. Like, that is it, you know, those people, like, and you know them well. Like, it's not just like, oh, I've seen that person, you know, at the jail. No, like, that person's the same with the one, oh God, and I'm blanking on his name. He was the guy that shot those security guards at Hub Mall. He was on my range for like months and months, and he would talk to me every single day. And, you know, right. And it's like, and so you have to have that like separation of like, I know what you did, you know what you did. I still have to be respectful and professional to you, but like, I know what you did. Right. Like, and people, and they're in the media all the time. And then, or for us, like, when they tell you something about what they did, right? Or they, you know these things because you've seen the file or you've read and you're like, the public knows nothing about this person. Like, in the media, you got it all wrong, guys. Like, you got it so fucking wrong. And like, sometimes you get really, like, sometimes I would get really mad and be like, fuck that. I want to call the Edmonton Sun and let me tell you exactly what this guy is like, because you want to fucking write this report. You want to write this story that like, oh, this poor guy and he's being mistreated. Let me tell you why he's being mistreated. Let me tell you why he's been on 23-hour seg, because he's a fucking piece of shit that is going to fucking either kill everybody on the unit or kill an officer or kill themselves. So when they're playing poor me to the fucking media, do your fucking research, come in and see what's actually fucking going on, right? And like, I get all fucking heated up and get mad and like get passionate about this, but it's true. Like, that whole whole media side of things and what the public know versus what we know, and like you said, and then you can't say anything. You just have to hold that in and silently seethe sometimes and be like, for fuck's sakes, if you know what actually had happened, right? Or if you, like you're saying, if you knew how many times I had tried to get this information from this person, and yes, now I sound really stern and mean, but it's because I couldn't get anything out of this guy and I needed to get the information out of him. So I 100% am with you on that. I don't want to take your whole day. I know you're got lots of stuff to do, but I do want to wrap up with some kind of rapid fire questions. I like to ask these to all of my guests, just as like funsy kind of, you know, keep you on your toes and make you think fast. But one of the ones that I always ask all my guests is, so you guys are working 14s and 10s, is that right? Or are you guys all 12.
We're 12s and 12s. Yeah. 2 days and then 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. 2 days. So 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off.
Yes. Okay. So you follow very similar to the fire schedule. Then that's
Mhm.
awesome. So we're working 12-hour shifts. We're working 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. What are we eating when we are on shift? What is our favorite food or snack?
If we're talking like a squad skip the dishes or Uber Eats order, we're usually getting like vermicelli bowls or Boston pizza.
Yes.
As typically what the squad goes for, or obviously we can keep it really easy and do the pizza route. But when we're really feeling like kind of, it's been a long set, it's our last night, let's treat ourselves. It's vermicelli bowls all the way.
Yes. And you guys are you're downtown, right? Or is dispatch out of
Yes.
downtown?
There's
Yes.
two call centers. There's the one at the Southeast Edmonton Police Station and then one at the headquarters, the downtown. We do that just in case of emergency where one goes down, we can all rush to the other one or vice versa.
Right. Downtown. So tell me that you're going to Golden Bird if you're going downtown for vermicelli bowls.
I've never even heard of it.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm about to change your life. And this is so funny because I literally this morning was like, it's my birthday tomorrow. And I was like, what am I going to have for my birthday? And I was like, I think I'm going to go downtown, which I fucking never go downtown because I hate downtown. I was like, I think I'm going to go to town and I'm going to go get Vietnamese from Golden Bird because it is legitimately, okay, their spring rolls are the fucking best spring rolls in the city.
I love spring rolls.
1,000%. Once you have one, you'll be like, this is the best spring roll you've ever had in your life. Their vermicelli bowls are fucking delicious. And it's right on 97th, like just past Remand, like old Remand on 97th. Awesome. Like, swear to God, fucking best Vietnamese. Best. So
next time my squad does vermicelli, I'm pushing for Golden Bird.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you. I know this is how. Can you tell I'm a chubby bunny? Because I'm like, it's my birthday. What amazing thing am I going to eat on my birthday?
You can eat whatever you want on your birthday.
Exactly. Okay. And so then in dispatch, I mean, obviously you have your radio and you have your computers and stuff like that. But what is another like piece of equipment that you really like love to use or that's super helpful in your role and what you do?
That's a tricky one. I mean, so yeah, we've got our radio, we've got our CAD system, we've got our mapping system. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a generic answer, but Google, like just Google helps so much with things. Like if the evaluator can't get the right address, you can just easily Google the name of the business, or if you need to check when an alarm is coming in, if the business is even open, or maybe they are just opening, and then we can kind of figure out it's staff coming in who didn't turn off the alarm correctly or whatever. Google is kind of a godsend sometimes. So yeah, just the basic internet is very helpful.
Yes. No, I like it. It's totally true. I've used the internet with inmate stuff, right? Look this up. Okay, so they're dropping this name. Well, let me go look at Facebook and see who is this person. And then, oh, look at this wide open privacy settings. Thank you. Let me look at your entire friend list and be like, oh, you're connected. Oh, these two. That's very interesting, right? Like, and then you can start to piece it together. Yeah. The internet is it's a treat sometimes, and it can be an absolute shit show other times. Okay. And then the last question I have for you is, what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's kind of like looking to get into this career? Like what's something you wish you had known before you started, or that you've kind of learned as you've gone along the way and you want to share?
For anybody who's really thinking about it, I guess the best piece of advice I could give is just jump into it. If you're thinking about doing it, like stop thinking about doing it and just apply and just kind of start the process and see how it feels from there. If the job offer comes and it doesn't feel 100%, you don't have to take it. But I truly think that for anybody who thinks about doing this career and thinks, oh, I think I could do that, you can do it. There's very different types of people, and there's a lot of people I've talked to who have just straight up said, no way, could never do it, not me. And that's fine. Everybody's different. But I just think for those who are kind of 50-50 on it, give yourself some credit. You absolutely can do it. Like I said, the good outweighs the bad. The bad, you've got your colleagues and your management to lean on if you need it. Great mental health resources and all of that. So yeah, I guess my piece of advice is just give it a go. Just apply and see what happens. And yeah, here I am 4.5 years later, and best decision I ever made. I love my job. I love my team. I have no regrets. And like I said, the good really does outweigh the bad. And those moments that I've gotten to save a life or made an impact on somebody's life makes it so worth the long, hard hours and the shitty calls or the shitty callers. It's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you put in, like if the job offer comes and you don't want it, then just say no. Like, and I think as women, we really do we doubt ourselves. And I think I've mentioned this before, or I've seen it in a study and I've talked to people about it, is like men will look at a job posting and they will go, I have one of those skills. Absolutely. I'm putting my resume in. Women will look at the job posting and go, oh, I've got 9 out of 10.
Look
No,
at
I'm
every
not.
single bullet point. Yep.
Like I only have 9 out of 10. Like, oh, I'm not qualified enough. And we don't put in. And I'm with you 1,000. Put fucking in. Girls, if you are listening out there, women, if you are listening out there, if you have one fucking thing, if you can do one thing that's on that job posting, put your fucking name in, because you would be surprised to see how fucking good you would be at that job, or how much better at that job you would be than the other people that are applying, even though you think that you only match up with one of those fucking points or one of those skill sets. Like, put in, just do it, take the leap, put in, because you will surprise yourself. And it could, like you said, it could be the best decision you've ever made. And you could end up in a space in your life where you're like, never would I have thought I would be doing this. And look at where I am now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think people just do have such a stigma behind it, that it's this impossible job to get into, or it's so high tech and crazy because of the movies that they've seen. But it's just one of those things that you do just need to take that leap of faith, and it is so worth it. And yeah, you can do it. I mean, we've got people from so many different backgrounds, not just emergency response or first response. Like, we've got people from all walks of life. I mean, I came from driving trucks, so, and it doesn't require schooling anymore. I mean, if you want to take the course, it's an amazing course. It's only a year. It'll definitely help. But if you don't, try anyways. And you'd be surprised at how quickly you get the call. So,
well, like I said, it has been a treat talking to you today, Erin. I can hear the passion in your voice for your job. I can hear the knowledge base that you have now, and just that like dedication to what you're doing, and that you are saving lives, that you are that first person that on the worst day of their life, that person is reaching you first. And so thank you for your work, and thank you for the energy and time that you put into what you do, and your colleagues and the people that you work with. I think it's an unsung first responder career that a lot of people don't link in, like same with corrections, right? Dispatch and corrections, oftentimes we're kind of not ever mentioned in that.
Definitely.
Thanks to all our first responders, right? And you're like, hey, like over here, we also do that. So thank you for that, and thanks for joining me today and sharing your stories and your just being open and honest about what you do and what you face. And I hope that this episode kind of reaches some listeners that, like you said, maybe weren't thinking about dispatch as well. Even as you were saying it, I'm like, there's 2 people already that I'm like, I'm gonna actually reach out and be like, hey, have you thought of this? Like,
I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, just because and so we'll throw your information in the show notes so people can reach out to you and ask questions if they want. And just thanks for sharing your time and energy with us today. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was awesome.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your 6.